about what females and men could do to young bodies, to little boys. I wish that I didn't have to do that, but they also never got touched. They knew their limits. They knew that their body was their body their entire lives, and still to this day. And then I was angry. I was angry for a couple decades, I would have to admit. Mm-hmm. And I was very angry at my cousin. And in our culture, your first cousins are your siblings. I was very, very ugly. He knew that I was not happy with him. But I've since let that go. I've been able to, be at family functions or funerals or whatever and talk to him now. So I feel like I've been able to sort of take the lesson, and I've left all the heavy weight baggage of all of that. But it should never have happened. It should never have taken 45 years or 40 years of my life to get to that point. He robbed me for me to be at my full potential. I feel like I'm driven, I feel like, I've done some great things. I feel, I have a good home. I have a great job. I have good kids. I have a great husband, stepchildren, and I have great family, great friends. But I can't help think about what if that didn't happen? You know what I mean? And maybe my life wouldn't have been such a struggle, especially me to myself. Mm. And we need to help each other. If you know somebody, you believe them, and then you straight on through to jury, you convict them. And you get that person, that tiny human being, you get anybody, help and support them, hug them, say, I believe you. We all each have a responsibility to do that.
Anna's rape kit sat untested for 18 years, while Alaska's backlog got worse. Troopers submitted evidence from Sattler's sexual assault examination for testing in 2018 under a project to reduce Alaska's mountain of more than 3,000 unprocessed rape kits. As of June 1st last year, 568 previously untested rape kits collected by troopers, including the evidence in this case, had been processed by a private lab under a federally funded portion of the project. Troopers say Perzacino was the first person to be charged with rape in an Alaska case as a result of the newly tested evidence and follow-up investigations.
We hear about these cases, these hundreds and hundreds of unprocessed kits. What do you think is, from your perspective, what do you think is wrong? Why aren't we receiving more justice for these types of cases?
I'm glad that it's the first case that they felt was strong enough to move forward on. But why didn't it happen 18 years ago? We could talk all day about rape culture. We could talk all day about, inequalities between men and women. We could, point fingers at a whole bunch of different things. But, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. We need, as a state, we have enough money that we should be able to address all of these, all of those backlog of cases. We have the resources. We need to use them.
What do you think justice would look like for you?
Well, that this individual not be released from jail. He has requested release court dates at least half a dozen times. Justice for me would be for him to live out the rest of his life in prison. He was going to kill me that night. There was no doubt about it. For full disclosure, I used to work at the state troopers, and that's how I began my career, essentially. So I'm very fond of them. I'm a huge fan of law enforcement in general. I used to bust bootleggers when I was, a little kid, or 15. So I'm very committed to law enforcement. In this case, however, there's always a bad seed. This trooper didn't believe me. And furthermore, did not look for the vehicle. And I understand that public relations in, the state troopers' public relations office said that they have to protect themselves. So they said that they felt they really looked for the van. They really, they looked at video, they asked questions, but in reality, they didn't. They did not communicate with me. They didn't communicate that they even closed the case a year later. So many things could have been done better there. So one of the things that I would really like to stress is if you're ever in a situation like this, especially with a stranger, note everything. So that's one of the reasons why my case is so strong, is because I had detail, lots of detail. And just keep your wits about you. I knew that I was already pretty bloody before it happened, because he kept tackling me when I was trying to run away and dragging me back. But I knew, and then when he said that he was going to kill me, I knew that I was not going to continue in that situation. So always, always, always look for the way out. My way out, I knew, because we were in a van driving, that I was looking for a house with lights on. I was looking for, any opportunity. As soon as I saw the DOT truck with all the lights on and a worker there, I knew that I was going to jump out. So we passed. I rolled out of the car very slowly. I mean, it took probably happened in a second, but to me it felt like, a minute. But I knew that if I was going to die that night, that I was going to die by my own hands. I really felt like there was a failure at A&MC, to be honest. I came back to town, it was reported, I got checked out, and there wasn't follow through. Looking back on that, I really wish that there was, or that I knew what to do. Instead, I went into survival mode and just talked about it to a very, very, very close friend. And I should have been able to have those services available to me. I presented to a health facility, and they should have followed through. There are steps to make that happen. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that there's a victim's, I don't even know what it's called, but essentially they would pay for any health insurance and whatever. I usually have my own health insurance, but I didn't at the time. And so the Soldotna Hospital charged me a lot of money. And I asked A&MC if they would cover that. There's a department that, you can talk to. That didn't happen, but the victims' rights deal should have kicked in. And so when these kinds of things happen, we have to be able to depend on the authorities to ensure that you're able to access these. And I would expect that the state troopers would have followed through to make sure, and that the health providers would have followed through to make sure that those things happen, instead of, falling on a clerk's deaf ears that you're, rubber stamp, you're not qualified. That was really unfortunate.
I think what bothers me most today is this, like you said earlier about rape culture, is like this victim shaming. I think that's a really big problem here in Alaska. When we read news stories, we only hear about like maybe this woman living a hazardous lifestyle, or like she was out, at 2 a.m. So in some way she deserved what happened to her. You know what I mean? What do you think about that? How do I ask this question?
I know exactly what you're asking. I can never wrap my head around rape culture. Why a man or woman, a man would ever think that their desire has more value over another human being. I would not go out at 6 a.m., noon, midnight, and ever beat somebody up. I've never been in a fight before, so I probably couldn't. But I would never go and invade someone's space and violate them, thinking that I had the right. What is it that allows somebody to believe that? But here's the other thing. You know hub life, village life, at high school, and getting someone drunk so that they can have sex with them. That has got to stop. And that has got to stop with every single one of us that lives out here and in Alaska in general. We have to support our family and our friends, and we have a personal responsibility to make sure that we're going to, in our high schools, and we're talking to our young men and women about what is appropriate and what is not. It's not right. We know that it's not right. They know that it's not right. Don't do it anymore.
How do you feel about, what happened to you 18 years ago and thinking about it today? Are there any differences that you've noticed, or like progressions, or with certain times comes certain, movements, I guess you could say? Can you speak a little bit about that?
I mean, the Me Too movement has been the best, has been the pivot point and the best time for women, I think, in general. Years ago, even now, I mean, really, you couldn't really talk about it without being so incredibly scared that you're going to be labeled something, just like you were speaking to. It's still scary today, and I knew that I needed to get on the front end of this, and that's why I approached Kyle before he wrote that article. But I was deathly scared for days after it was published. I was scared before. I was really scared after. I thought that there would be a huge backlash. It was so incredible, the amount of support from around the world that story has had. So there is definitely a change. I'd have to credit the Me Too movement because of it. I don't think that 18 years ago I would have had the positive outcome in terms of how people have received me or my story than I would have today. It's a huge difference.
Do you have something to tell women who have been in similar situations as you?
Yeah, that you're not alone, that you don't have to carry this yourself. Just like with any story, it might not be received well 100% of the time, but who cares? Keep telling it. Keep finding that support, because the reality is that it